Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. So our 2023-2024 season previews continue on yet again today with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the Lightning, obviously, in this time span of the channel, they've won 2 Stanley Cups. Now we're about 2 years removed of that last Stanley Cup, or getting there. And now it's time to talk about what is next for this team, because there is a lot of talks of them maybe having a declining season, and maybe they got worse, and there's the argument there. I don't really see it. Of course, we'll find out, but regardless, let's take a look at their season so far. Let's look at last season first before we look at this season and the offseason and all that stuff. In 22-23, they went 46, 30, and 6 for 98 points. They were 13th in the NHL, and they lost in round 1 to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I understand the concern. I understood the concern with Tampa because in that stretch, I'd say from probably March to April, they were kind of meh. They were in the middle of things. They really weren't that good of a team down the stretch towards the end of the season, and that's why they fell to 3rd in the Atlantic. And it showed that it was getting a wear and tear on a lot of their guys. They were hurt, and it really showed that those 3 straight Stanley Cup runs that they had to the finals, winning 2 of them, it really showed, and it took the toll on a lot of these players. And like guys like Cirelli weren't 100%, Bogosian wasn't 100%. I don't think Hedman was 100%. I don't think he has been since probably 2021. It really, it really has taken a toll on these guys, and it showed against the Leafs. It showed in the regular season against other teams as well, and it showed against Colorado too. Like, going on those runs that they did, they won They won 11 straight playoff series up to that point until they lost to Colorado. That's insane. And you add up those two they played in too. That's 13 straight playoff series in such a short amount of time, if we're being honest. That's like 3 years of, just 13 straight playoff series. It's rough on a team, especially, and I talked about that multiple times with Tampa. Now, this offseason, they did make some moves, and everyone talks about how their core is getting weaker, and a lot of their core is kind of leaving to other parts of the NHL, and that did kind of continue this coming offseason. They lost Alex Killorn, Corey Perry, Patrick Maroon, Brian Elliott, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Ross Colton, and Ian Cole was all the guys they lost. Killorn, a good top 6 forward there. He will be missed for sure. But really, seeing the contract that he signed in Anaheim, I'm honestly not too worried about losing him, if I'm being honest. Mainly because of how, just the fact that he signed that deal with Anaheim, he was going to want that money. It's good Tampa kind of got rid of that, if we're being honest. Corey Perry, not that big of a loss. Still kind of a loss, though. Perry, still a solid forward. Even though he is getting old there. He's probably playing his last season this coming year. Patrick Maroon, good fighter, good 4th-line player. Brian Elliott, a decent backup. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, another solid bottom 6 player. Ross Colton, part of that 2021 Cup run, was one of those unexpected young players that played well. Didn't have that this past season, and obviously he was traded away to Colorado. Ian Cole as well. There was obviously that controversy there, so he was probably leaving either way. But regardless, those are your departures, and your arrivals doesn't really help out. I mean, it helps. It doesn't. What I mean is, it doesn't fill the hole completely. It fills it a little bit, but it doesn't fill the hole completely. You got Connor Sheary, Josh Archibald, Logan Brown, Luke Glendening, and Calvin DeHaan. You got Connor Sheary there, probably going to be your second-line right winger, if we're being honest, unless if Izemont plays better out of the gate. Archibald has had his struggles getting back to the NHL after facing those, I think it was COVID that he dealt with, if I'm correct. I might be wrong. I apologize if I am, but regardless, he's had his struggles. Logan Brown, a solid, depth player at best. There's really nothing else there. Glendening, I always liked, a solid 4th-line center who could win faceoffs for you. Could be good on that 4th line there for Tampa. And then Calvin DeHaan, another add to probably your 3rd pairing on the blue line, unless guys like Radish and Fleury come up and play this season, which is possible, but of course we will find out. And yeah, that's your departures and arrivals. And honestly, the arrivals, they don't fill the hole, but they kind of make it less deep, if that makes any sense to y'all. But honestly, they really are on that. They are on that decline. We are talking about that. However, they still have 3 to 4 years of playoff contention with this core for sure. Your lineup is as follows, and it's via the Hockey News, so don't come at me for these lines. You got Stamkos, Point, Kucherov, and then Hagel, Cirelli, Sheary as your top 6. Pretty good top 6. Of course, you got your core 5 there of Stamkos, Point, Kucherov, Hagel, who was recently signed to an 8-year contract, who we talked about on the channel a few days ago, and Cirelli. So obviously that's your top 6. Sheary's the newest add there. We'll see how he does. The bottom 6 is where it gets iffy. That really is where it gets iffy. You have Tanner Jeannot, Nick Paul, and Mikey Eyssimont. Connor Kopecky, or Cole Kopecky, sorry. Luke Glendening and Josh Archibald is your bottom 6 there. Now, I would assume guys like Gabriel Fortier, Logan Brown, and Alex Barrett-Boulet will come up into the roster this coming season and play some games and could even beat out some of the guys that are on that 4th line. But obviously, that bottom 6 is substantially weaker than it has been in previous years. There's no denying it whatsoever. The 3rd line isn't terrible. Paul and Jeannot, solid forwards. Eyssimont, I like the way he played in the playoffs. I thought he played well. We'll see if that carries over to the season, though. Fortier, Brown, and Alex Barrett-Boulet could be interesting guys there to come up and play on the 4th line. But there's still a lot to prove from that other guys there, too. Kopecky hasn't seen the NHL all too much. Glendening, solid 4th line center, probably will be there for the majority of that season. And Archibald has a lot to prove. So, yeah, the bottom 6 is my biggest concern, and that's the biggest X factor. We'll get into that right here, right now. It is the bottom 6 because that is the biggest weakness I see with this core right now. The top 6 is fine. Defense is solid. Goaltending is great. You just need the bottom 6 to perform well, and then I think you're a really good team. So that's really what I need there out of Tampa this coming season. Your defense is as follows. Victor Hedman and Nick Perbix is your first pairing. Mikhail Sergachev and Eric Chernak as your second pairing. Calvin DeHaan and Zach Bogosian as your third pairing. And then Hayden Fleury and Darren Radish as your extra guys there. I've seen a lot of talk of DeHaan not being, saying that he probably isn't going to be a main defenseman on this core. So it is possible there guys like Fleury and Radish could come up and take a spot there from him. But obviously we'll find out. The defense is good. It's not as good as it was in previous years because Jan Rutta left and Savard and guys like that were part of those cup runs. But still, I think it's a solid defense nonetheless. I think it still is a good blue line. Definitely one of the better ones in the league for sure. And then goaltending obviously has been the same for the past couple of years in the starting role. Andrei Vasilevsky is your starter. And then Jonas Johansson, who I forgot to add there as a rival, as your backup, and then Hugo Alphanet is your third-string goalie. Johansson I've always liked as a goalie. Hopefully he can play solid with Tampa. He's always been on bad teams, but has played decent, so hopefully being on a team like Tampa will help him out for sure there. The biggest question facing Tampa, is their cup window closed? Are they still a contending team enough to go out and get a third Stanley Cup with this roster? Honestly, and I think about this a lot. Honestly, I look at those past 2 years, there were a lot of guys on that core that aren't there anymore. Andre Palat, Jan Rutta, David Savard. There's multiple guys that I'm probably not even thinking of. Blake Coleman is another one. You've seen a lot of guys that were on these 2 Stanley Cup winning teams leave and go to other teams. And this year we saw that again with Killorn and Perry and Maroon, some of the biggest one of the biggest grit bottom 6 players on the roster in those guys. And it's definitely difficult. And losing in this first round series to Toronto definitely proves things a little bit differently for what this team can do. Now, I will say this. I think that with a lot more time after that first round series, instead of going to the Cup Finals for a 4th straight year, I think it's going to do better for them. I think they probably will be healthier next year because they will be more healed because they had more time to heal during the offseason for sure. And I think just the team will be in a better spot overall when it comes to that. Just honestly, you're going to have to rely on a lot of guys there in the bottom 6 and other places there to help out with the roster. Your point projections are as follows. They're via the Hockey News' fantasy guide, so I did not come up with these. Don't come at me. You got Nikita Kucherov at first with 115 points. Braden Point with 96 points. Stamkos with 93. Hedman with 60, massive drop-off there. And then Brandon Hagel with 57. So yeah, pretty realistic top 5. Your sleeper or bust is Brandon Hagel. Once Hagel settled into his new surroundings, he lit things up. He's been an excellent complement to Tampa Bay's blue elite forwards. I can't read. And he was rewarded with career highs across the board. That will surely continue in a contract year. So yeah, obviously he was re-signed before this was posted yesterday, in fact. So of course there, Hagel, he still is a solid young forward, and him signing for 8 years really shows they're locking down on this core for the next 3 to 4 years. So are they a playoff team? Yes. I've seen a lot of talk to them not being a top 3 team in the Atlantic. I'm not sure I agree with that. I'm not sure if I can see Tampa finishing out of the top 3 in that Atlantic division. I'm not going to deny it. There are a lot of good teams in that division. I feel like, to be honest with you, Toronto's probably going to win the division at the state that things are right now. I think Tampa could be second or third. It all depends on Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo. It all depends on how they do in their coming season, because they're all in that position where they're like entering that breakout season they're expected to have, or at least some of them are. Ottawa and Buffalo are the biggest teams that are expected to. Detroit may be a little bit ways away from that, but of course we'll talk about them in their preview. But regardless, there are a lot of teams that are in different spots right now. But I think Tampa probably finishes second or third in that Atlantic division. I can't see them finishing out of there. But regardless, let me know your thoughts down below. That is your 2023-2024 season preview for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Hit that subscribe button down below. I would greatly appreciate it. But anyways, thank you all for watching. The next one we're doing is the Buffalo Sabres. So kind of fun transitioning to another Atlantic Division team. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.